Hello there, everybody, and welcome to our predictions and speculation video this week. This week, we are talking sadly about the finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm very sad this show is almost over, but it is setting up to be an epic finale, and we are going to give you all of our predictions and speculation here right now. But before we do so, please hit that like button down below and subscribe to our channel for continued Star Wars content. We will have Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 6 review next Wednesday, as well as our Legends Book Club returns on Monday. If you haven't checked out our comic review that was last Monday, check that out for the month of May. We also done tier lists in the past, so we've had a lot of content coming out of our channel, and we'd appreciate it if you guys check out all of it and continue to follow us as we finish up here with Obi-Wan Kenobi. But this is kind of for the foreseeable future, unless something crazy happens in Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 6 that really changes where if there's could possibly be a season 2 or a prequel show to this. This is our last predictions and speculation for this show, and it seems to be a juicy one to predict and speculate on because, like you said at the end of our review for Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 5, there's a major thing that happens right at the end of this episode, and Reva gets beat by Vader and the Grand Inquisitor left for dead on Jabim. But she finds Obi-Wan's it's like a step up from a comlink. She finds it, and it has the recording of Bail Organa on there saying that he is going to Tatooine for the boy because he's worried about Obi-Wan's silence and that he needs to protect the children. And that seems to be spurring Reva on for a new task. Now, it seems like we are going to spend a lot of time on Tatooine in next episode, and there are a lot of canon things that could possible traps to fall in here with that if Vader himself goes to Tatooine. So there's a lot to talk about just in that little bubble, let alone with all of the other things that could possibly happen in this. I think where I would start is just Reva herself. I think Reva, so she's been stabbed. This is now the second time in her life she's been stabbed by Anakin / Darth Vader, and seemingly is going to live to tell about it. Personally, I don't know if I really love the fact that she's living again, just because I feel like, okay, once, her hatred for Anakin keep going, but twice, who does she hate now? Like, is she can't beat Vader? She knows she can't beat Vader. So what's she gonna do? Go after the Grand Inquisitor? Well, she already failed to kill him once. Is it Obi-Wan? Is she mad at him for kind of betraying her and leaving when he was kind of not? He didn't fully commit, but he was basically hinting at, "Oh, we'll team up and beat him," and he left her. So, is it Obi-Wan? She's trying to get revenge on by taking out Luke. I feel like that might be more the angle they would go with because I don't know. I feel like Reva versus Vader Part 2 would be a little redundant because it should just end with her getting absolutely destroyed. So I'm wondering, and I want your thoughts on this, how is she, and possibly however long she has to live, going to impact where Obi-Wan and Vader's final duel happens?
Where it happens. Yeah, see, that's where it gets a little tricky because even in the comics and all that, Vader finally does go to Tatooine after the events of A New Hope. Um, he has like a bunch of sand people worship him. He just goes crazy and nuts there. I think he finds Obi-Wan's old hut or something too. He finds out about how all these things, this whole life that he is disconnected from, left behind, and how those pieces kind of allowed his son, or at least Luke Skywalker, until he finds out that Luke is his son, right? He is a Skywalker. And, I don't want that to be erased. I think with how Bad Batch handled the Kanan comic, there's a possibility of that kind of being messed around with. Though I will say it feels more of a Filoni move to do that, and it feels more because Kanan comic was much more low tier compared to the Star Wars mainline that was sold like a million copies first issue and all that. So, I think it's gonna be kind of hard to mess with that. Um, I mean, this whole last episode ends with Obi-Wan saying like, "Oh, something's wrong. I got to do something. Like, I don't know what it is." I think he kind of sells Roken like, "Oh no, don't. It's nothing to worry about. Like, it's nothing, right?" I think he's trying to keep these people calm after this tracking and everything that happened, but I think he knows something is really wrong, and I would suspect that luring Vader and everyone into Tatooine is not the move here. I could see Bale kind of doing kind of how he does in Episode 3, showing up to get Kenobi near Utapau, where he's gonna be more in space. This transfer happens with Leia and Obi-Wan. Um, yeah, I just really don't see Leia being on Tatooine. It would be fine, I guess, if she was like at the spaceport transferred over there. But again, I think the further away she is from Tatooine to bring Bale back, right, the better. If he can kind of get Bale to stop on his trip, pick up at some moon or something else nearby, that'd be better. But I don't know. I think that is the one thing that this past episode doesn't really give us a hint or clue towards. How is this supposed Vader Obi-Wan fight gonna happen? Because I don't think it happens on Tatooine. I really would not want it to be on Tatooine. Um, I think it'll be if you're gonna do the rematch of the century, a bunch of sand dunes ain't really it. So I think it'll be somewhere thematically relevant. Maybe Mustafar again. I would kind of love that if Obi-Wan is back on Mustafar. And now he's going to Vader's castle. Where Vader dictates the site of his greatest defeat, and thinking that he could just stroll in there and do the right thing, but realizing that, oh no, he this is not like even ground for either of us anymore. Like, there's no high ground for me to take advantage of here. Like, I am screwed until maybe a Qui-Gon speaks to him and urges him on. Um, so I think that's how that direction goes. But Riva, I think she's living because she knows that Leia. I believe that she knows Leia is Anakin's daughter. I don't know. She knows to some degree the connection is there. I don't see any reason for why to kidnap Leia unless she knows of Anakin being the father to Leia or something. If it's just like a political statement, that doesn't seem right to me. So I feel like she knows even more about this family tree of sorts. But I think it's pretty fair to say that when everyone thinks of Anakin, even if he had a kid with Padme, they only think it's one. And Padme only thought it was one because she didn't get it checked up, I guess. But yeah, so there's only one kid in everyone's mind, but there's two clearly, and that's really, I think, what now spurs her on. Her need to like at least deal a blow to Anakin's prodigy, right? She couldn't do it with Leia. She couldn't, and she used Leia as more as a way to lure out Obi-Wan. Um, but if she can, find out that Padme has another kid and do something about that, I would think that years of research, she might be able to make a connection that Padme and Anakin are close. Maybe put two and two together. That's how she figure out Leia's connected. But no one knows about Leia and Luke. So now that she knows Luke is there, yeah, it seems like that's how she's gonna go for it. Like, even if I'm gonna die, right, I'm gonna drag myself onto my ship. Even if I can't walk, I'm gonna go and kill Luke essentially, or hold him hostage to lure Kenobi back in and have my revenge. But I don't think she's in any state to have a lightsaber duel at this point. I think whatever it is, it's just she's gonna threaten to kill Luke. Maybe hold him by his gruff, and then point the lightsaber at him. Um, it does raise questions about how will like Luke not remember this and then be like, oh, a lightsaber. It's like, what is this sort of shiny object? That's where I really, if that happens, where he's being held hostage, I really, really need Obi-Wan to do a little bit of a mind wipe, a little like clean things up here and there. With Leia, I would love again, for Leia or Bail to say like funnel up a few things here. I just can't remember stuff about Mapuzo or Jabim or the Path and all that, and I'd like to see if that could happen. Again, I might be the only person online screaming out for Obi-Wan to kind of mess around with these kids' memories just for their safety. Who knows? I think the Leia story, if it just she gets picked up midway through space, effectively works still. It still works for her story and message to Obi-Wan at the beginning of A New Hope. But this Luke stuff does concern me because I want them to like not make him realize that he's seen a lightsaber and been threatened by it before. But it seems like that is really what Reva is going to do with her like, final angry dying breaths. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
So, rounding all the way back to the location of the fight, Mustafar was also one of my first choices, but again, that's where this whole Reva thing really throws a wrench in everything. And I thought, when this episode was ending, I was like, finally, since like Mandalorian, a Disney Plus show hasn't bit off more than it can chew. Like this episode has wrapped up a lot of things, and now it seems like we are heading just towards the Obi-Wan Vader conflict, and that's going to be it. However that resolves, Obi-Wan's going back to Tatooine. Vader either thinks he's dead or thinks he's gone away, and he's gonna look for him for the next 9 years. Whatever happens there is gonna end the show. But the Reva thing throws a whole nother wrench in it, because is Reva going to be using this information to try to get back on Vader and Inquisitor's good side? Is she going to be using it to lure out Obi-Wan? Does she have something against the Path? What is her actual goal here? And I think, to me, the most logical goal is to try to get back at Obi-Wan, but then that takes away from the Obi-Wan Vader conflict. So is Obi-Wan Vader like the first half of this episode, and then Obi-Wan Reva is the second half of the episode, which I think will make the episode fall flat, because I feel like you should just devote everything to Obi-Wan Anakin, because that's what this whole thing has been set up for. But if they don't marry the two, then I don't know. Like, obviously Vader can't find out the information that Reva has, but also Reva doesn't say that it's Anakin's children in the message. It just says the children. They have to protect the children. So she doesn't know whose children, but she knows they're important to Obi-Wan. So I think that's where it ties to her luring Obi-Wan out. But then how do you have Vader and Obi-Wan have a duel on Tatooine, and she's going to get Luke, and Leia's there, and Vader has nothing to do with any of them. I mean, he meets Leia before episode 4, because she knows him, and when they meet on the Tantive 4, but he obviously has never met Luke, so that can't happen. Then we round all the way back to what you were saying with Luke and Leia, and I think, to me, I'm not a big fan of the mind wipe, but I think it makes way more sense for him to do it to Luke, because that's his like person he's protecting. I feel like with Leia, that Bail would be like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there would be like a little bit of like a whose father is whose type of thing, where Obi-Wan is much more involved with Luke and Luke's life, where less so with Leia. Although now I do like the way Leia's relationship is rounding off with Obi-Wan. Makes more sense why she names her son Ben. Like, stuff like that is all started to tie together a bit more. But yeah, there's just a lot of holes into what could happen, and how does it not step on other pieces of canon. And that's where I get concerned with, did they bite off more than they can chew? Because if they do decide to like split it up into two pieces, maybe first he's dealing with Reva, and then he beats Reva easily, then it's like, well, why did she even survive? They could have just left that out and then takes on Vader. Or if he takes on Vader first, finishes the Vader conflict and finishes with Reva, then it's like, well, that's kind of an underwhelming ending. It could have been Vader. I feel like they have to marry the two in some way, but Reva's not going to know, but Anakin can't find out about the children in general. So that's the biggest flaw. And I don't think Reva knows that Leia is Anakin's child.
Yeah, she probably doesn't. Yeah.
She said, well, I think she says in one of the episodes that when Leia's like, "Why are you doing this?" She said it was because Obi-Wan was like served with Bail. They kind of play off of that episode 4 angle, even though we don't really see it that much in the Clone Wars. But Obi-Wan and Bail are tight, so she thinks by using Bail to contact Obi-Wan, that it'll pull Obi-Wan out of hiding. I think that's ultimately the grand plan, but now that she knows about the kids, she definitely has to die. So how is that going to happen, and how is it all going to tie together? I think that's key to figuring out the plot of next episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they've got to navigate it really well. I don't know if it'll be a half and half. I feel like they'll be like 75% of the episode is, we deal with that big fight, and then he thinks he comes back home to his life of solitude. Maybe Qui-Gon's giving him the motivation to beat Anakin, or leave the duel on good enough terms that Vader knows he's alive, but not really. Things are a little bit more up in the air until A New Hope. Um, but I think to some degree, that urging that he gets in that fight, maybe Qui-Gon's like, your job's not done yet. Go help the boy now, right? You just helped the girl. And so he thinks I think maybe Obi-Wan takes it as like, oh, like I got to go back to my life in solitude. So he goes directly for Luke, and then he finds Riva there with a subdued Owen and all that. That would obviously add more to why Owen really hates uh, Obi-Wan, right? More than he already does. I still think we're in good shape because a lot of Riva's backstory had to be explained in this past episode. And not only is it explained, it was done. It's completed. We don't need anything more about her past. It's just, what is she living for these like final moments is the question now. I think we'll handle it. I think Deborah Chow is going to handle it well. That doesn't mean I'm not nervous, but just with how she handled 5, I'm really excited regardless.
Yeah, and I was completely cool with like Luke barely being in this show. I think at this point, like we've come to accept it that he's not the main character, which makes sense because we had comics about Obi-Wan protecting Luke. We could have a book maybe in the future about that. And if Ewan McGregor wants to do more, we could have a prequel series strictly on Tatooine with Obi-Wan. We could do something like that protecting Luke. But yeah, I think, and that's where I am kind of worried because I do agree. I think it is going to be, I feel like with Riva, if it's not well written, the way it's going to end is like 90% Obi-Wan Vader, that ends, and Obi-Wan's like, okay, I'm back. And then Riva just shows up in his cave with Luke holding her with the lightsaber, like, I'm going to kill this kid because you betrayed me. And Obi-Wan has to, take her down. I feel like that's just such like an unnecessary, like, falling action back to rising, that quick climax back to falling. Like it's just an unnecessary little twist that a lot of times these things add at the end. I don't know if we necessarily need that. I'm hoping the writing has been pretty good. And episode 5, something I forgot to mention in our review, but I mentioned in the reaction, it's for being a 43-minute episode with the credits, so like a 36-minute episode, it was so well paced and had so much information in it. It felt like it was an hour. Like it felt like 45 minutes. It did not feel like it was 30 minutes. It had a really nice flow and pace, and it covered way more than I thought it possibly could have, especially with that timeline. So I feel like the writing overall has been pretty strong. So for episode 6, I think if they tighten the plot, but also giving us a good length, I think they'll do something that we're not expecting and kind of tie it all back in. Just stepping on canon is another flaw that I'm not 100% sold on, but this show has done a really good job of it overall. Like I feel like the Filoni stuff with Kanan also comes down to just him being the guy that created Kanan, so he's like, I'm going to do whatever I want with Kanan. Where none of these people who wrote or are involved with this show created any of these characters besides Riva, so they don't really have a license to mess up things with Obi-Wan or Vader or Luke or Leia that's already been set in stone. Hopefully that's the case. I think the last thing I really want to touch on before we wrap up predictions and speculation is Bail Organa, Leia's involvement in the next episode. I feel like their story has been wrapped up for a little while, but I don't feel like you tease Jimmy Smits again in a hologram if he's not going to show up in the next episode and be a part of the conflict. So possibly Bail showing back up. We also have the ever present Qui-Gon Jinn possibility. We have stuff like that. And then just the overall quote from Ewan McGregor that he keeps giving over and over and over again on press junkets is, "This is how I get my Obi-Wan into Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan." Well, we really haven't seen that at all. Like Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan is old, happy, and just sitting in the desert watching over Luke. So what could possibly switch in one episode Obi-Wan from being, full of trauma, dealing with the fact that Anakin is still alive, dealing with all these problems and all these different characters still in his life, to hermit old Ben who's off in the desert? That's what I'm intrigued about, how this episode is ultimately going to end. Like, I think the final 5 minutes of this episode are going to be super important for the trajectory of who Obi-Wan is in the next 10 years. And maybe if there is a plan for season 2 that they've been hiding, great, or they decided to do, great. I'm fine with a more open-ended ending for that, but I feel like just with the way Ewan McGregor sold it over the course of these last couple months as he's done press, he keeps saying, "Oh, this is how we transition from my Obi-Wan to Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan," and I don't really see that in this show. So not that that's a bad thing. I don't need that, but I feel like it's going to happen. I don't know if you have any thoughts on like the way Obi-Wan kind of separates himself from this conflict by the end of this show.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that has to be tied into what has to be the Liam Neeson appearance, and the voice of Qui-Gon and all that. The trauma has to be relieved by the connection, it seems, in my mind, right? Like, there's no way that this battered old man who's, yeah, he's done enough for himself, but being able to do all these things right, but not get one or two of them right, that could destroy the whole foundation of who he's becoming and changing. So finding out about Vader and all these things, like, yeah, he's been doing well, but like, he's just a flick away from the whole dominoes cascading and falling back down. But the one thing that's like the cure all would be a Qui-Gon appearance sighting. And I think that ultimately, I think that's like the last 5-10 minutes, more like focused. I think we get hear Qui-Gon's voice before we see him during the duel and whatnot. Um, maybe that's what urges him to Tatooine. Maybe it's Jimmy Smits who has to call him back. I don't know how he'd call him back without the special receiver. So, but that does raise a point about the quote that he has in Rogue One, where Mon Mothma was like, "That Jedi, like, what about him? Like, do you trust him?" And he's like, he smiles and walks away with his cape, and he's like, "I trust him with my life," right? Like, he's so confident and happy, um, just like so assured at the in his role in Rogue One. And I think maybe he's also subdued, right? Maybe he's under threat here. Um, Maybe that's how they tie in. Maybe Leia just goes to Obi-Wan's cave at the end of the day, right? And doesn't meet Luke, but gets pretty close. I'd like to see that, like how they could get so close to meet each other, but they don't ultimately. That'd be pretty interesting to me. Yeah, it's a tough one. Again, this is where a show like this can just become filler, and filler is hard to, it's not like a connected tissue. It's like oh, okay, like we had to make the story because Ewan is a star and all this and that, and people have been clamoring for it. And to some degree, you can argue this whole thing could be unnecessary. I still think this is necessary if we get to transition to the Alec Guinness, where he's just enlightened and knows what to do, and he's assured. Um, so maybe when it comes to Tatooine, even though this circumstance with Riva, like probably trying to kill uh, Jimmy Smits and Owen, not Jimmy Smits, Bale and Owen and Baru and everyone, right? And Luke, obviously. Perhaps, he's, because of the way the duel happens and reconnecting with Qui-Gon, he comes in and he can just kind of talk his way out of it. I don't think this is anything where he has to use the Force even. He just has to give that old man wisdom, right? Just talk Riva down And I'd love if Reva just kills herself, right? Like she's been stabbed twice already, but no one's been able to kill her. She's been a survivor. I'd love if she just stabs herself one more time, like sacrifices herself, because she's like, I can't live with my failure here. I can't turn good and all that. My hunting days are over. I'd love to see maybe that's how it ends, and Obi-Wan has to kind of do like the Darth Maul, close the eyes. I'm so sorry, but this is my responsibility. Maybe she sees that ultimately. I don't know. That again, this is where it's a little nervous and tense, but if episode 6 is 80 to 90% as good as episode 5, I'm pretty sure that this series is going to end with a bang. It's going to be great. And yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just very happy with what we've gone so far. If it sticks to landing, like, 9 out of 10 marks for me, like 9 out of 10 things I want to see, great. Like, even if one thing's a little off, like, sure, whatever. But Star Wars has been about retcons and all these little things forever since its inception. So if it does every single plot beat right, and even if Reva takes up a little bit more time than I want, but it makes sense at the end, can we see that transition? Why not? I'd be more than happy.
Yeah, I think if they nail the transition, I think all of it will. If they just have to nail the Vader fight and Obi-Wan fight, it has to be both exciting but also thematically rich, and they have to nail the transition from Obi-Wan to Ben Kenobi, the hermit Ben Kenobi, instead of the Ben Kenobi that's basically Obi-Wan Kenobi, but a sad version of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think Qui-Gon is the way to do that. I think as we would imagine, it is very hard to learn how to become one with the Force and one a Force ghost. And Yoda goes through incredible trials just to even be able to communicate with Qui-Gon Jinn, let alone further trials of learning how to become a physical embodiment of the Force. I feel like Qui-Gon setting Obi-Wan on this mission for the next 10 years. Obi-Wan, this show has shown us an Obi-Wan that's completely disconnected from the Force and now been forced to rediscover the Force. Now it would be, I think, very thematically rich, but also time consuming for Obi-Wan over the next 9 years to be like, I'm going to completely devote myself to becoming the best Jedi master I could possibly be, become the wisest person I can be so I can pass on all of that knowledge to Luke. I was wrong, similar sense to, like Luke in The Last Jedi. I was wrong to close myself off from the Force. I was afraid. I was giving in to my lesser instincts. And now I've realized that it's not better for Luke if I hide who I am. It's better for Luke if I become the best version of myself I can be. So when he's ready, I can, pass on everything I've learned and not fail like I did with Anakin. Because like if Obi-Wan considers himself a failure, with Anakin, he hasn't learned anything new since Revenge of the Sith. He's been hiding. So if he continues to develop, I think Qui-Gon setting him on this course, obviously we're not going to really see it, but Qui-Gon setting him on this path, I think that would be a strong way to end it, and a way that would help Obi-Wan rediscover who he is, a purpose in life, and just a mission for the future that would be connective with Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan. And I think that's going to wrap up our predictions and speculation for Chapter 6. Thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button down below and subscribe to our channel. Also, comment below, let us know what you thought of Chapter 5 and what you think will happen in Episode 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's the finale. There's a lot of things we talked about here. What do you think will happen in the next episode? Let us know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Check out our Legends Book Club of Kenobi on Monday, and then also check out our review on Wednesday for Episode 6 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the finale. We'll be talking about it on Wednesday morning. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.